the courage to show up for yourself on a daily basis, right? Being consistent with that and being willing to see yourself for who you really are, right? But knowing that that's not where you're going to stay. And I'll use this example. My first therapist had me write all the positive things I was dealing with on a marker board right there in her office, and all negative things. I had probably about a dozen things I wrote down for the negative side. On the positive side, only thing that I had that I could write at the time was hope. And I realized that's who I am. That's my identity. That's why I had to go through this entire process to have everything stripped away. What's left? What's left? And for me, it was hope.
Hey, Champion Nation. My name is Kashaun Cooper, and I am the host of the Champion Nation podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, can you please do me a favor? It would mean so much to me if you can scroll down and subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes. Also, if you can hit that little like button, comment below. Your comments mean so much to me and our other viewers and listeners. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey, Champion Nation. My name is Kashaun Cooper, the host of the Champion Nation podcast. Today, if you are into mental health, if you like therapy, if you're into advocacy, this is the show for you. If you know someone that's into mental health and therapy, send the show to them because they are going to enjoy this conversation. I am excited to have my friend, my brother, Darius Fennell, to join the Champion Nation podcast today. I'm super excited. He is an author. We're going to talk about that book. But most importantly, he is an advocate for the mental health and therapy space. Hey, Darius, thank you so much for joining the Champion Nation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to get into this conversation.
Absolutely. I am too. So since you're ready to jump in, I'm ready to jump in. Hey, Darius, tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
All right. So as the host mentioned, I am Darius Fennell, published author and mental health and therapy advocate. Everything I do stems out of empathy and lived experience. I strive to help people overcome mental health stigmas and partner up with licensed professionals so they can get the help that they need and find their unique path to recovery. So mental health is no strange thing to me because I've dealt with anxiety personally all of my life and was personally diagnosed about 6 years ago with generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and depression. So having those labels kind of told me, hey, these things aren't to just be like normalized as just being a regular part of my life, but they're issues that need to be addressed. And so that's how that whole journey began, really from the beginning, but also six or 7 years ago when I ended up in the hospital. So
wow. Yeah. That was, anytime I have a conversation with someone in the mental health space, is usually a direct correlation between their passion and their personal experience.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's exactly what's going on, or that's exactly what happened on your end.
Yes.
You said you ended up in the hospital 6 years ago?
Yeah, about 6 or 7.
Can you take us back to a point in time what triggered that?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I mentioned like normalizing certain things that happen to you. Like for me, feeling anxious, worried all the time were just like a normal part of my life, really. One of the things that stands out and that was kind of real interesting was different people in my life, like whether they're mentors or close people, saw these different kind of warning signs like, hey man, you might want to slow down a little bit. Or, you can't keep this pace up without something bad happening. I'm like, guess what? This is all I know. All I know is go. The light's always green. We push the clutch in and find another gear and,
go.
Yeah, it always worked. It didn't matter like what happened. My resiliency was there. I always found a way to bounce back. Of course, I went through huge periods of burnout and passion, but there was always a recovery. quick one. Rest for a little bit, take a couple 2 weeks, and back in the game again. This particular instance, I was working on, again, being a overachiever and perfectionist and just trying to really just doing too much. I had an assignment that usually would take me about 3 to 4 weeks to do. Well, I decided to do it in 3 hours, right? In 3 hours, I got it done.
I already see where this is going,
Yep.
Darius.
I decided, you know what? I can kind of cruise for a little bit, so let me go ahead and take a nap. Well, in the middle of that nap, I woke up right into a panic attack. And so here's kind of what that entailed, right? Resting heart rate over 140 beats per minute, tight chest, tight throat. I feel like I was in a dream world, or a term that I later learned was called dissociation, where you feel like you're in a dream world or everything around you is not real.
Yeah.
Slightly kind of dizzy. And I looked at my wife and I was like, yeah, you might want to take me to the hospital like right now. Because I wasn't even thinking about mental health or anxiety. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was like, something's wrong. I'm about to go out. And, one of the things that kind of changes you is when you start thinking about end of life thoughts and scenarios. Everything from, dang, did I love my wife enough? Did I do enough for my kids? Does she know where the insurance papers are? Should I tell her she can remarry? Like I'm thinking when we go to the hospital, I'm not coming out of this thing. This is it.
Wow.
Because I'm not thinking about any particular thing that would, if you're worried about, say, an assignment you got coming up, or a presentation, or a test, or maybe something's going on with a loved one, like that's kind of weighing on you mentally. I just finished the thing that was kind of bothering me the most. I got that thing done.
Right.
So I didn't really connect like the whole like body alarm part of like anxiety with that being a part of mental health. I'm like, no, it's got to be my heart. So let's go and have these tests run. I get there and they did some initial EKG and stuff like that. And they're like, we'll send you home. And I'm like, I thought about Serena Williams when she had her first baby, and they told her she was okay. Like, you're all right. And she was like, nah, I'm going to advocate for myself. And I think you got some run additional tests. And it come to find out, I think she had like some blood clots or something. Had she had gone home, she would have been out of here. Right. I'm like, you know what? You got to advocate for yourself. I'm like, something is not right. And I need you guys to do some more tests. Well, that turned into 1 day of testing to 5 days of testing.
So you spent 5 days
Yes.
in the hospital?
Yes. Yeah.
What?
That was the turning point where I was like, okay, this isn't just feeling nervous, or this is something deeper that I obviously can't run from anymore. There's no more pushing in the clutch and I'm going to catch me if you can. Yeah, no, we caught you. We got you. I'm a big fan of all the Rocky movies. This was my Ivan Drago.
Yeah.
But I wasn't Rocky. I was Apollo Creed.
Yeah.
You saw what happened to him.
I saw.
Yeah, that was me.
So that was your pivotal moment.
Yes.
The definition, the societal definition of success is go, 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 go.
Yeah. I love it.
I do too, you say you loved it. My bad. I love. Hey, but you're the guest right now, so it's not about me. Hey, this is I'm not airing any dirty laundry right now. It's all on you. But let me ask you, did your wife ever say, hey, babe, you need to chill. You need to slow down. Did she ever say that to you?
In so many words. It maybe didn't come out like that, but she was among a wide variety of people who were trying to say, hey, bro, yeah, man, chill out a little bit, But in those days, I found that offensive. I'm like, no, we got to be productive. And again, and this is where kind of jumping ahead into therapy, how you define your sense of worth and worthiness. And all that had to be redefined, because for me, it was solely based on performance and accomplishments and achievements. If I were to be honest, now I would never told you that back then, but now it's like, oh yeah, that's at the root of it. And this is where, after running all the tests and everything, came back negative, which was kind of you don't want anything to be wrong with you, but at least if they do catch something, you can identify it, you have a label, and you have a path forward. They sent me home from the hospital basically saying, follow with your primary care physician. So I basically went home the way I came in. That's a bad feeling.
Yeah. But at least you had a label for it, right? Did you have a label for it at that time?
No, I did not. I didn't get the general. I didn't get the general ID disorder until I went to. I did listen to the hospital and did follow up with the primary care physician, where I got the official diagnosis. So yeah, when I left the hospital, they left me. They sent me home with some pills, and follow with your primary care.
Hey, let me know the name of that hospital so I know I don't go there.
You know what though? It's surprisingly, the more I've talked with different therapists and people I've met on social media, that's pretty normal.
That's pretty typical. Okay. Yep. But let me ask you this: that we're talking about something that took place around 6 to 7 years ago. But were there early signs that you chose to ignore? Do you mind sharing those things?
Oh yeah, everything that I mentioned about what took me to the hospital, they were at probably a lower magnitude. The racing heart, or what would be the medical term is tachycardia, which can include heart palpitations and skips. I had those all the time. The tight chest, the dissociation, all those things were there, but they weren't turned up to like level 100 like they were on that fateful day in 2018. That's how I knew. I was like, okay, I'm probably not going to bounce back from this. And obviously, one of my other tools from being in that kind of burnout phase was going to sleep, but that wasn't working either. So I was like, okay, now I'm open to other things that I used to dismiss, i.e. therapy, where because of the stigmas of the past of three main things, right? Don't want to look weak, don't want to look crazy, don't want to look lazy or inadequate. So I'm not going because I'm not any of those things. So I don't want to be labeled that. So I'll figure it out my own way and just continue doing what I always do. But when that's no longer effective, and you've ignored your check engine light long enough, but you don't know how to fix it, then your quality of life goes away. Here's another term I'll throw at you is agoraphobia, which is the fear of leaving your house.
Can you say that one more time?
Agoraphobia, which is the fear of leaving your house. I mean, you could probably get a little more technical for all the, clinicians could probably give a more technical definition of it. But in essence, that's what it is. You don't want to leave like comfortable spaces because for me specifically, I was worried about having like a panic attack in public. And nobody being able to help me, or just the embarrassment of it. Because I mean, you can't stay calm or just kind of like, okay, I'm having a panic attack, I'm just going to sit here. You're like, so you're going to draw a lot of attention to yourself because you honestly feel like you're going to die, especially if you don't know what it is. You're like, oh shoot, I'm going out. So.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? You bring that up. I did not start having bouts with anxiety until my mother died. My mother died 11/30/2017. So 6 years going on 7 now. And I think the crazy part about that whole situation, obviously she passed away, but my phone was on do not disturb that night, which never happens, right? Never happens. It never. Wow. So when I woke up to a whole bunch of missed calls. Yeah, a whole bunch of missed calls, except for the one from her. And immediately my mind put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, oh, something is wrong. Then I called my father. And my father, he, I joke with him sometimes about this. He didn't have the decency to set up the story. He didn't, set it up where I'm like, okay, get to the point. I said, yeah, I said, hey, Dad, I'm sorry I missed your call. Hey, yeah, I just want to let you know, Mommy passed away. What? Like how? I mean, it wasn't no setup. I mean, he didn't massage the story before. He just went straight in. Hey, this is what it is. And Mommy passed away. And since that time in my life, like literally, I'm talking about where I feel numb. Like my lips starts to feel numb. I feel, I just want to just curl up. Yeah. Have you experienced that?
Oh yeah. Everything from feeling like my entire body is vibrating.
Yes.
Numbness, and I think it's neuropathy.
And your feet. Yes, and your feet. And there's a level of anxiousness.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. the adrenaline blast, cortisol,
Yes.
all that good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But for me, it was from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah. So it's
That's
like,
insane.
who can endure that? And this went on for months, man. Months.
Yeah, you can't work like that.
No. I mean, luckily I had a good boss that after, I explained kind of what I was going through, it's like, oh yeah, I've been through that too. And I was like, oh, God, thank God. Cause sometimes it's all about how you're able to produce. And if you can't, you're out of there. If you don't have a boss that can have, empathy and my first level and next level boss, we're very accommodating and they, take all the time you need and let us know what you need. And we can delegate tasks and stuff like that. So that made things very, very helpful. I'm still in touch with them to this day because I have, eternal gratitude for, that part because, no job, no finances, but guess what? Your bills aren't going anywhere. Like, hey, bro, it's due. Where you at?
Which is going to trigger another attack.
Let's go.
I get it. It is. It definitely is. And seeking help. That's one thing. Being a man is one thing. But especially in our community, and I don't want to make this African American Black thing, but I do know in our community, seeking help. Yeah, right. Seeking help from counselors is not something that we run towards. No. Right. Our back has to be against the wall. So you shared a few things about not getting help, but what can you share about the misconceptions you had and you hear about people going to counseling and how that changed your perspective about engaging with it?
Yeah, first and foremost, like the stigmas are absolute, they're lies, right? And really, when you come from a place of survival, there's a lot of stuff that you'll exaggerate because you're hypervigilant. And if the main goal is self-preservation, then, a lot of things that maybe aren't necessarily true become exaggerated. Like, for instance, going to therapy means that you're weak. Guess what? You're already in a vulnerable position. Your body is showing you that, you've overdone it. So guess what? You are in a place of weakness right now. But that doesn't mean that's the end of it, And I've had 2 therapists that I've gone to. Both of them have been excellent for where I've been during the journey in my life. The first one in particular made day one extremely comfortable and safe, right? And that kind of blew one of my misconceptions of they're going to get in here, interrogate me, and make me talk about talk about a bunch of stuff I don't want to, talk about, and I'm going to feel worse afterwards. And that was totally opposite. You share what you want to share in therapy. You're as vulnerable as you want to be, and nobody can force anything out of you. The other aspect of, I didn't know about, the different laws and HIPAA and stuff like that, but as long as you're not causing harm to yourself and somebody else, or giving the impression that you're going to do that, you can't talk about your issues with anybody else, So whatever is talked about in therapy stays in therapy with those exceptions, maybe a couple more depending on where you live, but those are the main 2. But right off the bat, I realized that I can unload a lot of this stuff. And guess what? I need to. I've been holding some of these things for decades, and it's a big part of why I arrived where I am. And it's not going anywhere. It's not going to change until I deal with all these things that I've been stuffing down or trying to outrun. One of my favorite nursery stories is about the gingerbread man. And that dude did most of the book running from everybody in the town. Everybody was trying to eat him or get to him, and he was so delicious or whatever, but he just, the slogan was run as fast as you can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man. That was me most of my life, whether running from insecurities or unworthiness or even my own anxiety. It's like push the clutch in, man, and find another gear. But what I learned the hard way was man up eventually turns into man down. Without any quick recovery. And so what I thought my will could overcome, it wasn't enough. The bill came due, I couldn't pay. And you remember the story about Humpty Dumpty, how they tried to get all the kings and the king's horsemen to put Humpty Dumpty back together again?
Yes.
Dietitian, cardiologist, primary care physician, therapist, community groups were kind of all those people that helped put Darius back together again, and it was a very, very, I needed to be a slow process. And I think a lot of ego had to do with not wanting to seek the help. And so for me, there was no other path. I had to crash and burn. Because in order for you to really get into like a new pathway and accept a new way of life, you have to despise the old. And for me, that meant pain. And seeing things for what they really are and learning how to sit with those uncomfortable emotions. And my first therapist, it felt so counterintuitive. I'm like, okay, I got to the point where I'm comfortable talking about this stuff. And the first thing you say is, let's pause here and sit with this. No, I don't want to do that. I told you these things so I can get rid of these things and get away from these emotions. And she's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Now in hindsight, I'm like, okay, I understand now what that means. But those first initial moments of, hey, let's sit here. I'm like, hey, you know what? Might be my last session here because that wasn't a part of my agenda,
Right. Absolutely.
It's the very thing that you need in order to get back to go through the door or reach the place of healing and recovery. You have to go through the door of discomfort. And that means redefining so many different definitions, right? One of which is vulnerability. For me, my definition is not weakness. It's being open and trusted environments. That allows you to connect. It allows you to conceptualize the things the new perspectives that are being taught to you and to see things in a new way. If you continue seeing things like the old way through the lens of a survivor and not a thriver and not someone who's healing and becoming, you're going to stay stuck. It is going to be very frustrating. Matter of fact, it's going to be triggering to talk about these issues from the past because you're still seeing them from the same point of view. And this is where truth in and of itself becomes very uncomfortable. But those moments of being uncomfortable compared to the freedom that comes afterwards, there's no comparison. So I had to learn to embrace that and learn how to sit in things. Okay, let's talk about this unworthiness. Okay, so you were one of three boys growing up in the household, and both parents were teachers. We had a high standard in the house, right? So for me, yes. I internalized, well, if I'm not performing, then I'm not worthy of love. Well, guess what? If that becomes your mode of operation as a child, you carry that into your adulthood, into your relationships, into your marriage, into being a parent, into your job. And so everything becomes out of balance. Everything becomes done to an extreme, but everything done to an extreme, something's going to get neglected. Your check engine light's going to come on. You're going to continue to ignore it. And then you're going to be on the side of the highway. And for me, that side of the highway was a mental health breakdown and panic attacks. But it had to happen that way. There was no other path. Because you couldn't have told me anything else back then. For almost 2 decades, you have people who don't even know each other telling me the exact same thing. Slow down, go see a therapist. And I didn't listen. So here's a path you have to take now because you had time. But now what people don't realize is not only is it doing something in your mind, but you're breaking down parts of your body. Your subconscious mind expresses itself through your body. Right? So if you're having palpitations, how's your sleep going? How's your hydration? When's the last time you got some exercise? Or how your breathing patterns going? All these things are activating different parts of your system. Your body is one huge complex communication system: electrical, chemical, hormonal, mental, respiratory. All those things are being affected by you being at this extreme level and being out of balance. And that's why for me, it took so many different, people to go to understand, how do these systems operate? What are they, first of all? How do they operate? How do I cooperate with them? And that begins your pathway of healing. That's only the beginning.
Well, the hardest part is the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? And you said something that was so freaking phenomenal. You said, just sit with it. I know when things has happened in my life, I like when my mother passed away, it was like, all right, she passed away. All right, it's time to keep it moving.
Yep.
And that has always been my struggle.
Yeah.
is to embrace every aspect
Yeah.
of the pain.
Yeah.
And do not rush the process.
Yeah. You gotta grieve. You gotta grieve. Because the same thing
And
happened to me.
I think
Because
that's what I'm dealing with. I literally believe it's still, I have not, I mean, I talk about it. Well, no, I don't. Because even when my son tries to bring it up, Jabari, when he tries to bring it up, I'm like, I don't want to talk about that, man. I don't want to talk about that. But that's what it's like. Okay. Sit with it. Don't waddle or wallow in it. Don't make it your home.
Right.
But just visit. Is that what you would recommend to all of us out here, the Champion Nation?
Yes. So, and I would advise for that to be done under the supervision of a therapist too.
Absolutely.
Right? As you are sitting with these things, some other emotions are going to pop up that you may not be ready for or don't know how to process, you know? And for me, sitting with a therapist, I have and had like just a place to where I could just cry. Sometimes there's nothing to say. Sometimes I just like about 6 months before my mental health breakdown, my wife and I lost a baby. And just like you said, it's like, you know what, keep it moving. Put all my energy into her, making sure she was okay. And, everything in the house keeps moving. And I didn't really check in on myself with that. I just kind of pushed the clutch in again. And, it's like, here we go.
Right.
The ginger man is, he's back at it again. He's getting away again, And even back to that nursery story, at the very end, he gets to a river and he can't cross it because he's made out of a cookie. So this alligator says, "Hey man, like just hop on my back. I'll take you to the other side." You already know where I'm going with this. So he gets on the alligator's back.
I already know.
He did. He starts taking him across the river.
This is a bad idea.
Lower his back, so the gingerbread man has to get closer and closer up to where the alligator's nose is. And once he got to the tip, flipped him up in the air, ate him. And for me, that day I had to go to the hospital was it flipped up in the air and ate. There is no getting to the other side of the river because this had to be the last destination of doing things the old way. For me, it took all that to say, you know what, I can open my eyes to the reality to say my way, the way I know it today, does not work, and neither is it efficient. So I need to get help. And that blew all the stigmas out the water. It's like, I don't care if I look weak. I don't care if I look crazy or lazy or inadequate. I need help because I can't get myself out of this.
Right.
Right. It don't matter about my ego at this point. Like, here's the other thing. You got kids that are watching you. You're modeling for them how they're supposed to live. We want to tell our kids what to do all the time, but most of the time when I'm watching my kids, they're doing what daddy does or what mommy does. Well, how did they figure that out? They were watching you. And what you do over and over again becomes instruction to the next generation. So what do you want to show them? And that's enough to put your ego down and say, it's not just about me at this point. I don't live in a vacuum. What I do is going to affect everybody around me, including my family, including my spouse, including my job, including my community, church, and everything else. So once you look at it kind of bigger than yourself, then it's like, I can lay the ego down.
You are absolutely right. With the enormous amount of experience that you have, what advice would you give someone who's currently caught up in the rat race of success, but hasn't yet faced their mental health crisis?
Yeah. One of the reasons why I tell my story is to show lived experience of what happens when you go into a burning building, right? And if you're headed towards a burning building, I'm going to try to stop you midway and say, hey, man, it's hot in there. You can listen to what I'm saying and other folks like myself who have been through the journey and are trying to tell you you're headed towards that same place. Or, you maybe need that fire to light you up a little bit. It's always a choice. My mentality is go get the help while it's sunny rather than, once
it starts raining.
That's what happens. It's easier to be in a preventative state than to do disaster recovery.
Absolutely.
Right? Disaster recovery is a long process. Think about when tornadoes hit a community. It takes, years for those towns to recover from the damage that happens, right? But if say, okay, when we build these houses here in these towns, speaking metaphorically, we build them so that they can withstand the winds of hurricanes and tornadoes. So yeah, there's going to be a little bit of damage, but not like complete and total devastation, right? We can minimize some of this stuff, Because I'll be
Yes.
honest with you, last summer I had a little relapse, right?
Okay.
After 6 years of journaling through and finding a new identity and a new normal, I kind of went back to my old ways, and my heart started tripping again. And I was like, we were on my way to see my dad for Father's Day. Got about a third of the way there. This time though, I knew what was happening, so there was no
Okay.
pain. It was like, okay, I went over the limit. Let's go ahead. Number one, rule out that there's nothing wrong. Get the EKG, get some blood work done. Okay, those came back fine. All right, schedule time with my therapist. We did this exercise called the thermometer, where you look at probably the last 4 or 5 or 6 events that you've maybe encountered within the last month, right? And maybe how it affected you. And once we start adding stuff up, I was like, oh yeah, this, I'm surprised this didn't happen earlier, you know? But now you got the tools, you got the resources, you have the therapist in place, you have the dietitian in place, you have the PCP in place, all the other stuff that I had to kind of discover over a period of years, I got at my
Yes.
disposal now. So now, rather than taking 3 or 4 years to recover, 3 weeks. And really, that was just time to just allow my body to rest, get back to doing the right things, going to sleep on time, getting my hydration, doing my breathing exercises, doing the meditation, all little things that I talk about in my book, Leaving Jupiter, of creating your own toolkit, right? If you think about a mechanic, they have all assortment of different types of tools that they use. You don't necessarily use the same tool every day, but you got
No.
it in your disposal, right? And okay,
Yes.
if this happens, if I'm changing the tire, I'm going to use this instrument. If I'm changing the oil, I'm going to use this instrument. But you got it in there, and you know how to use each one. Versus
Right.
just kind of looking at the engine like, all right, where do I start? What do I do? What's wrong? You know all those things because you've been
Right.
there before, and you're going to walk back through this thing again and come out again on the other side. Which was funny because I was like, dang, I gotta read my own book. Like, what did I tell the people to do? So now it's like, how real is it? Like you told the people all this stuff, you wrote about it, you've been through it one time. Is it really real? Well,
Right.
now here's the test. I was like, okay, here we go. Page 1. Yep. Okay. So you get back in the rhythm, and like I said, 3 weeks back in the game again. But
I'm curious to learn, why did you name the book Leaving Jupiter?
yes, so I love metaphors and analogies.
I do
Right.
too.
So if you think of the planet Jupiter, number one, is huge, right, compared to
Okay.
Earth. I think you can fit 1,300 Earths inside of Jupiter. It doesn't have a known surface. The air there is very toxic. It's not something that we could breathe. Gravity is almost 2.5 times what it is on Earth. So basically, if you weigh 100 pounds on Earth, you're 250 pounds on Jupiter. So you can scale and do the math for your own weight. So
Right.
it'd be very hard to move.
I just got scared just now.
Right. And the winds there are just like crazy. The storms there are just 1,000-mile-an-hour winds and stuff. Imagine trying to leave there on your own. It would feel impossible, right? And that's what anxiety felt like to me, like impossibly trying to leave this strange place I've never been to before, and how do I find my way back home? So that's why I say the subtitle is Navigating Your Anxiety Recovery, because it's a navigation. I'm not a clinician, and that's always my disclaimer. I'm not trying to diagnose, cure, or prescribe anything. I'm sharing with you my lived experience, and I'm sharing with you the tools I've learned along the way, and leave it up to the user, or the user. I'm thinking, I'm sorry, my background is engineering, so I'm using I jumped into my
Okay.
You get to use it with the input. No,
There you go. See, there you go. You go. Let's bring it back in, my brother.
Right.
Bring it back in.
It's all part of the algorithm. You know what I mean? So every little so, but yeah. So that's basically kind of where that whole thing came from. Is you can experience something that feels impossible, but rediscover hope at the same time with the help of other people.
Thank you for sharing that. If there was one chapter that you would recommend above all else, what chapter would that be and why?
That is a great question. Because it's a progressive book, so it's kind of layered.
So you have to read it from start to finish. Okay, so it's not like a resource book.
Right.
Okay.
It sort of is, but I set it up in such a way that I don't want you to. So, let me try these different tools. Nah, you really need to go get your blood work done first. You really need to. So the book is divided into 3 sections, right? There's awareness, where I talk about the importance of having a journal and the importance of going and being assessed by your doctor, getting the blood work and all that stuff done. Rule all the physical stuff out, right? Secondly is the equipping stage, where I talk a little bit about the nervous system and autonomic systems being split between parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest part of the nervous system, and sympathetic, which is fight or flight. Which one are you in? Which one are you activating? How do I, stimulate one over the other? And how do I cooperate with them? When is it appropriate for one to be on and all that other stuff? And then how to find a therapist. And then the third section, which I'll probably say probably a little more biased towards, is the execution, where I use two what's the word? Acronyms, abbreviations. The word is escaping. I think it's an acronym, but it's MAP, which is mindset and action plan, and GPS, which is goals, progressiveness, and self-identity. Right. I guess I'll highlight and say these are the 5 things that I would say probably really, really important through your journey. Is the one about discomfort that I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Courage, which is not what you think it is in terms of I'm going to wake up every day and take on the day. No, courage is about showing up for yourself with compassion and consistency. Where the days you don't have it, guess what? You're still worthy of love. You're still worthy of, peace and joy and everything else that comes with life. And that is internal. It's not something you have to work for. Right. So then you stop the internal resistance and fight and struggle. It's the other one, compassion. That one infuriated me at first. Because, and this revealed some things about myself, is that I regarded myself as a machine and not a person. Right. When your car breaks down, you're not like, oh, are you okay, car? It's like, no, let me go ahead and get this oil change and the transmission fluid or belt or whatever and get it back on the road. I don't care how you feel.
Right.
That's how I regarded myself. I don't care how you feel. Get back in there. Whatever you need to do to get back in the game and get back to the high speed chase, do what you got to do. But no regard for my emotions, my feelings, my the need to rest, the need to say no, setting boundaries, saying yes to everybody, trying to people please. That will wear you out.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So there's 5 different principles. I think I went over 3, but radical acceptance. It doesn't mean that you agree with things that are happening. And here's one that my second therapist infuriated me with. Right now, it wasn't on purpose. It was a shift that I did not want to deal with. But we create these fantasies, and I don't mean like, romantic or lustful, but we create these alternate realities because we don't want to deal with the truth of things that are like maybe really hurtful, right? Maybe certain people in your life who weren't there for you the way you thought they should be, right? And so your expectations of people wanting people to treat you the way you love and the way you treat them, it's not realistic. Right. And it can, and in essence, it can also be manipulative. Right. Nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
But in order for me to have peace again, I had to kind of detach from certain things and certain expectations that were not realistic or healthy.
Wow.
And that's a man, that was one of them. After that session, I had to take the day off.
Yeah.
It was around noon. And I told my team at work, I said, I need the rest of the afternoon because this, for what I needed from the second therapist, which I thought I was needed from the first, she was good at ripping the Band-Aid off. Like you came wanting to deal with this. Okay, we're going to deal with this. My first therapist, I had to learn how to sit with stuff. It wasn't time to necessarily try to process everything, but it's like going from high school to college, right? One's not better than the other, one is a foundation for the next step, right? So you need one in order to get to the other. So there is no leaving Jupiter. There is no doing podcasts without my first therapist, right? But then there is no processing all the hard stuff without my second therapist. You know, each one brought a unique set of skills that helped me to deal with appropriately in the right season, the right time, in order to heal and recover. But there are certain days that were not fun or easy to hear the truth. But guess what? That's the cool part about a therapist is they're not as emotionally invested. You know, when you love somebody, oh, let me put them down soft. No, you've been doing this same thing for 40 years. There's no time to be soft with this. I need you to see the thing for what it really is and deal with it. Let's get in here and deal with it. Now that we've exposed and called it what it is and no longer lied to ourselves, here comes the compassion. Here comes the patience. Now let's walk through this thing. But a good therapist is not going to continue to let you lie to yourself. And that's part of the trap that keeps you stuck. You're lying to yourself and you're fantasizing. And your family and everybody can tell you stuff, but that therapist who doesn't have the emotional attachment, I don't say they don't care, but it's their job to tell you the truth if you're there to do the work. And I said, hit me with it. Let's go. I come with my journal, hear the issues. And a lot of times I would say, listen, I'm not there. I'm not fighting you as a professional and what you're saying. I'm saying I can't accept that right now. And I want to understand why. So let's walk through where my resistance is. So I'm willing to hear the truth. I'm willing to have my feelings hurt. I'm willing to go through having to cry. Because once you start to see truth, you can't unsee it. It's like, okay. But now I can reach back into the first therapist thing and say, now we have to sit with this. We pause. We hit the pause button. And then we come back and revisit it again and keep going. It's hard. It's having to go through as a client of therapy. It is not easy, but it is worth it and it is rewarding. Right. And so if you're willing to go through, it's just like anything else. If you've ever been to physical therapy, which I've had to go through, like the first 2 weeks, you don't feel better. Matter of fact, you feel a little worse. And I remember telling the person
a lot worse. You hate it.
Yeah. I remember telling the PT lady, I was like, listen, I don't feel like this is working.
Right.
You know, just give it time. What we're doing is we're stretching you. Your muscles have atrophied. So we're getting that strength back and we're increasing your range of motion, none of which are comfortable. So guess what? Emotionally and mentally, exact same thing. Range of motion, stretching you, and strengthening. Nothing fun about those, but definitely rewarding. If you're willing to do the work.
And speaking of willing to do the work and the outcome being rewarding, we spent about 40 minutes together, and I know I still have about 40 minutes more worth of questions to ask. but I know time is really, really slipping away.
Yeah.
Darius, what does it mean to you to be a champion?
So I would go back to what I call the 3 C's, which are compassion, courage, and consistency. Right? The courage to show up for yourself on a daily basis, right? Being consistent with that and being willing to see yourself for who you really are, right? But knowing that that's not where you're going to stay. And I'll use this example. My first therapist had me write all the positive things I was dealing with on a marker board right there in her office and all negative things. I had probably about a dozen things I wrote down for the negative side. And on the positive side, only thing that I had that I could write at the time was hope. And I realized that's who I am. That's my identity. That's why I had to go through this entire process to have everything stripped away. What's left? What's left? And for me, it was hope. And hope, the definition of that is confident expectation. Or if you want to get biblical, confident, godly expectation, right? It's not just wishful thinking, but think about if you are expecting a child, right? And when they say, oh, we're expecting, you start preparing a room, you start getting clothes, you start mapping out the route to the hospital, all types of things that start to drive your action to prepare for this thing that's coming, right? And so being a champion of hope says I always expect things to get better because I'm willing to do the work. And that's what makes me a champion. And that's why my email is hope.champion@beyondanxiety.com, because I'm the champion. I am the champion of hope. And that's why I know anybody I talk to, no matter where you are, guess what? It's going to get better. You're going to find your own unique path of recovery, and then you're going to be a mouthpiece for your sphere of influence in your world.
Thank you so much, Darius. I have a lot to think about after this conversation. This was great. This was great. Where can our viewers and listeners connect with you?
Yes, so multiple places on my website. Beyond-anxiety.com is where I post different blogs, and you can also purchase a book from me there and get a personally autographed copy of my book or books, Leaving Jupiter, Navigating Your Anxiety Recovery. And I also have the Leaving Jupiter journal, which allows you to do all the work that's talked about in the third section of the main book. I'm also on Instagram as well as TikTok under the profile handle beyond.anxiety_. You can also find my books available on Amazon. Just do a keyword search for Leaving Jupiter and you'll see the bundle there. And if you got Prime, you probably will get free shipping and all that good stuff. And I've also, this is my 5th podcast for the year, but I've done a number of podcasts and live showings on social media, whether it be TikTok or Instagram. So you can catch me on those particular channels as well.
Thank you, Darius. Champion Nation, I'm quiet because Darius dropped the bombshell on me on this show right here. I think I'm going to sit in my little chair right behind this computer with my journal, and I have some undoing and some reworking to do. But this is why we have these podcasts.
Yes, sir.
This is why we have the Champion Nation. See, it's not just for you; it's also for me. It's also for me. This is my therapy as well. But Champion Nation, I hope you enjoyed this particular episode. I know I did. I'm going to recap it in one phrase: sit with it.
Yes, sir.
Whatever that it is, sit with it. Don't rush it. Don't breeze over it. Don't sweep it under the rug that we can, do so eloquently. Just sit with it. Just bask in its presence. Now, I'm not saying make it your home. Darius is not saying that either. He's saying sit with it, address it, become aware of it, deal with it, and move on. Champion Nation, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Hit that little like button, the little bell, so you don't miss anything. Champion Nation, this has been wonderful. Please have a champion week. Thank you, Darius.
Thank you again for having me on.
Awesome.